Now, I was brought up on the principle that minestrone was bright red, lots of tomato, and it was normally tomato paste and things like that, but that's, And then I came to Australia and I went to a restaurant, and I think it was Steve Manfredi's restaurant called The Restaurant, one of his early, if not his earliest restaurant, and I had this soup that was in the style of minestrone. It was called a minestra, actually. He said, it's in the style, the waiter said it's in the style of minestrone. And it came, it wasn't red, but it was beautiful, it was full of vegetables. Now, I'm not saying that this is a minestrone, but it's sort of got the similarities in a sense. It's got a bit of tomato in it for sure, but mainly it's got lots of veggies. I've added a ham hock, which I don't think is traditional at all, but I love ham hocks. This is a smoked ham hock. But I've also, if you want to have a look here, James, for me, I've got lots of veggies. 1 medium to large leek, 1 large onion, 2 stalks of celery, 2 zucchini, and 2 medium carrots. And I'm just going to saute those, obviously, in some olive oil, and add a few other things. Of course, I never liked the bright red minestrone, I have to be honest. It didn't do it for me. All right, so these veggies I'm just throwing in the fairly hot oil, and I'm going to saute them, just give them a whiz around every now and then. And I'm going to add a couple of other things as well. And we'll turn that down a bit because I don't want that to be too fast, because I don't want it to colour. I want to keep the colour of the veggies. And what I've got here, actually I'll put the garlic in first. I've got a couple of nice plump cloves of garlic, which I'm going to throw in. And I've got 3 medium potatoes, which I'm also going to dice. It's worth doing the dicing fairly evenly, because what it means is your soup looks good at the end. They're all sort of similar size. And it just makes a big difference because it's nice and neat. Actually, Steve Manfredi, what a chef. He's a bit special, isn't he? He's had a lot of restaurants since The Restaurant. I enjoyed The Restaurant the most. I must admit, it was lovely, simple food. I think his mother was in the kitchen making the pasta, if I remember correctly. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I do think she made the pasta. And he did beautiful salads. I always remember he did this lovely salad which had prosciutto, good parmesan, I think some fresh figs. What else did it have in it? Anyway, it was lovely. Asparagus, I think, because it was one of those things that was only ever done right in season. Actually, I talk about that being my favourite Italian restaurant. I think I've got 2 favourites, and they're both in Sydney. Lucio's is still there, and I love Lucio's. They do some wonderful food. And of course, Steve Manfredi's still around doing, I presume, because I haven't been there for a while, I presume doing some terrific food. Anyway, enough talk, Ian. We're just getting the cooking process started here. So we will cook that for about 5 minutes. We can turn it up a bit now. And the reason being is that I've now got all the veggies in, or most of them I should say, because once that's sauteed, what I'm going to do is add a really good cup of cubed Savoy cabbage, and you take out the stalks and you take any ribs out, so it's just nice tender. That goes in once that's gently sauteed. A couple of litres of chicken stock, packet's fine. Look, if you had some homemade, because I now have got you, when you're doing your chicken, you're keeping your chicken bones, aren't you, in the freezer. So you're going to make chicken stock every now and then, so you can use homemade if you like. I've got great faith in my audience, haven't I? I know they're out there every day making chicken stock. Nah, you don't have to, guys. You can use packet, it's fine. I'll forgive you. So 2 litres to start, because the veggies will cook down, so don't put too much at the beginning because they will soften and they'll cook down. And also a couple of cans of Italian diced tomatoes, please, Italian. And we'll add some pepper, not too much, we can add extra at the end. And we'll add that ham hock. Now make sure the ham hock is covered, and as it goes, what happens is if you need more liquid, because you don't want that ham hock to be uncovered. Now what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to cook that reasonably gently. Don't boil the heck out of it, there's nothing worse, because it'll toughen everything. And I'm going to cook it for about a half an hour until that ham hock is tender. Then I'm going to pull the ham hock out, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all the rubbish off. I'm going to take the skin off, I'm going to take the extra fat off, take the bones away, and I'm going to shred it. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to talk to you about what happens next. Right, what I've got to go in my soup next, just some green beans that I've cut into pieces about that big. They go in. And by the way, I've added about another litre of chicken stock. And what I've also got is some soup pasta, which I'll do about half a cup. When the pasta is cooked, the soup is ready. Right, and what I'm going to make is some basil pesto to go with it. First of all, perfect, and I mean perfect, basil leaves. There's about 20 of those. Also a clove of garlic crushed. Now, the whole secret, and I've made pesto on the show before, but the whole secret is don't overblend it because it will cook and it loses its wonderful freshness. Right, I've also got some pine nuts. Now, I know some people toast them. I don't bother. I just put about a tablespoon of pine nuts in there, raw, and 2 cheeses, pecorino and some parmesan. So I like the combination of the pecorino, and which has a bit of a bite to it, and the smoother parmesan. But if you just had parmesan, you'd get away with it. All right, some olive oil, good olive oil always. Oh, 3 tablespoons, 4 tablespoons. And then we will just process that. Now if you feel, and I have to yell, I'm sorry, if you feel you need a little bit more olive oil, which I do, just put it through the feeder tube. So let's just have a little taste. As I said, let's just make sure. I'm not a great fan of putting any salt in it because the cheeses are always fairly salty. And we'll see if we need more cheese. Certainly don't need more cheese, that's perfect. It doesn't seem like a lot of ham, does it, from my hock? But that's because I've taken off every skerrick of fat and sinew and the whole lot. If I was doing it for myself, maybe I'd leave a couple of them on. But that can go in, and we will check the seasoning because we put a very little bit of salt in, because remembering that the hock is so salted, so be a little careful. This is looking rather good. Into a nice big bowl. Let's just have a little bit of that pesto on there. Now this is up to you. I quite like an extra bit of parmesan. Now to go with this, my wine guru friend, Mr. Prentice, tells me that most people would put a Pinot Grigio with this, but he's a fan of a red because of the smokiness of the ham hock. So what he suggests is a Tempranillo, which that one's not too bloody bad. So we'll have a glass of red with this. Enjoy.